Everybody, hello everyone. We are live, just to let you know. We've moved from the backstage. I'm just keeping an eye on everybody else who needs to be admitted before we go live with the marketing panel. I hope that people viewing have been enjoying the ARVR INNOVATE conference. Just to let everybody know also that we are continuing with the networking event. There's quite a bit of interest in that, so please do join on the networking if outside of the sessions. That would be great. Great fun, and hopefully see as many of you as we can there as well. I'm just letting in the last of our panelists who's just arriving, which is great. So we're ready to go with the Immersive Technology and Marketing panel. And I'll start with the latest arrival, James Watson, who will be familiar to quite a few of the people at ARVR INNOVATE who've spoken on a couple of occasions at this stage. James is the founder of XR Tech Marketing. Over the past 10 years, he's built up substantial experience in the immersive technology sector, primarily VR, advising a range of organizations from startups through to Fortune 500 companies. And he's worked in marketing and innovation for over 20 years, first of all, starting in the tech travel startup space in Sydney, Australia. And he has worked for renowned agencies such as Ogilvy and leading programs with them for clients such as Cisco and Filippos. So delighted to have you back joining us again, and also delighted to join to be joined rather by Cortney Harding, founder of Friends with Holograms. Cortney, lovely to see you again, and thanks for getting up early, by the way, because you're joining us from the US East Coast. So good morning to you. People will remember your fantastic contribution at the event, both live a couple of years ago and also online. So it's great to have you back on board. For people who don't know Cortney, she's the founder and CEO of a transformational VR AR agency, namely Friends with Holograms. Fantastic name, I love that name. Focused on creating innovative, powerful and effective experiences for training, and her clients include Walmart, Verizon, Accenture, Coca-Cola and the US Air Force. And there's lots more, but I'm sure during the panel presentation we'll get to allude to what people are doing and what excites them about the AR and VR world at the moment. Also, first timer for us in ARVR INNOVATE, so very strong welcome to Filippos Arvanitakis. I hope I've got that right.
Yeah.
Co-founder and creative director at Outhere. He's joining us, I think, from Gothenburg. Isn't that correct?
Yeah.
And Filippos is a founder and creative director of the Outhere agency, and his latest work focuses on VX, virtual experience design, exploring the aesthetics as well as the new languages of interaction and narratives within the fields of AR and VR. And he has 18 years of experience in digital marketing and communication. And last but not least, and staying closest to home, a local boy, although he's come from a certain distance to arrive with us in Dublin, but we think you're one of our own now at this stage, Rafael Pages, who's the co-founder of Volograms, which is, we're very proud of the work that Volograms are doing here in Ireland. They really are making a mark on the global stage in terms of the technology, and he's CEO of that company. We'll hear lots more later, and they have a booth, by the way, so you can check that out. He's co-founder. He's a coffee enthusiast. I don't know. I don't see your mug, by the way. Courtney had a mug of coffee, but it's a company, Volograms, that creates awesome volumetric video for the immersive worlds, and he's been working in the 3D reconstruction field for 10 or more years, both as an entrepreneur and as a researcher. And Volograms brings reality capture closer to everyone, and their technology is very groundbreaking, so I won't steal his thunder. I'm sure I'll give him a chance to tell us a little bit more about how it really makes volumetric video accessible to the masses. I think that's the unique space, unique thing that they're doing. But we're here to talk about AR, VR and marketing, which is so close to my own heart. That's what I'm really passionate about. That's where I first got interested in AR and VR latterly, its impact on the world of marketing. So many themes we could talk about, but I'll start by asking the panel generally, what marketing campaigns using immersive technology have you done, and or ones that you've admired, and what do you think makes a successful use of immersive technology in marketing? Whether is it primarily at the top of the marketing funnel, like awareness building, or is it more down in terms of commercial and commerce side and transactions? Maybe I can start with yourself, Filippos, if you don't mind. Answering that question. Well, give us some examples of things you might have done and that would help us understand the role of immersive tech in a marketing context.
It's hi everyone. It's maybe in some way hard to pick one thing, but if I had to, I would say the ability to place 3D objects in real space is the biggest game changer of all the apps. I think and as you've seen perhaps from Google now, adding the animals into the shirts that you can directly see with USDZ, and this kind of idea that every product, every object, every natural object can exist in 3D and you can see it live, animated in front of you, I think is the biggest transformation. Obviously, IKEA Place is the first one that did it right. I'm quite proud of the Bang & Olufsen AR experience, which uses the same principle, but has moved a little bit further by doing this, by focusing so much on making sure that things look almost photorealistic, so you don't understand what is real and what is fake. But that thing for me is like the biggest thing. You can go into any company and see their products and everything in front of you in your own world in augmented reality. That's just extraordinary for me.
Oh, you're muted, Alex.
Was the sound okay? Can you?
It's fine. I think somebody just said there seemed to be a background noise at TV or radio, but I can't say that I heard it myself.
From my side, there's nothing here.
No, so. I don't think so. I think we're okay. On that general theme as well, we'll come back to, because I think Bang & Olufsen, I'd like to hear a little bit more. But Cortney, I'll bring you in terms of, you've done so much stuff in this space already. And I know that training is a big part of what you do as well, it has to be said. But from a marketing point of view, campaigns that you've worked on or that you've admired at a distance, as it were.
Oh, yeah. So we've consulted for Coca-Cola in terms of augmented reality for marketing. We helped them with a couple pilot campaigns. So that was a really fun and interesting experience. In terms of stuff that I've admired, I mean, my favorite always, until I see something incredibly better, is the Burger King campaign. I want to say it was in Brazil. Definitely South America. I'm 99% sure it was Brazil. Maybe it was Argentina. Anyway, the point is, really fascinating campaign, won a ton of awards, but basically to drive adoption of the new Burger King ordering app, they built an AR campaign where you could hold your phone up to like a McDonald's ad or a Five Guys ad, a competitor's ad, and it would burst into flames. And it was very clever and very, very edgy, right? So it's not right for every brand, right? Something like that wouldn't work for a lot of brands. But for this particular brand, it worked incredibly well. And I think that's really where we kind of need to start going, is not the sort of gimmicky, okay, look, here's a character, you put him on your table and he dances. Like, that's cute once, but you're not going to drive any sort of chatter or adoption doing something that's just one and done. So I think the use cases are either, like you said, the IKEA Place, where it's, you know, very useful, very valuable, or whether it's something that's really compelling and clever. And I think that's where we kind of need to start thinking in that spaase.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned something interesting as well about that example, and it was Brazil, by the way. One of our delegates has confirmed that. Thank you, James. Yeah, this omni-channel dimension as well, you know, combining AR with outdoor advertising. I mean, admittedly, it was the competitors' outdoor advertising, but this idea of combining AR with your TV screen, with your computer, I mean, there's a lot of opportunity there I would expect to see in the future. Anyway, we'll come back to that, I'm sure. Rafael, maybe I can bring you in terms of how marketing can, what you've admired from others, and also maybe the type of work that you see your own company fitting into the marketing space in terms of what marketers would use your volumetric video for.
Yeah, definitely. I think that if you ask me about marketing campaigns that have been impressive for me, all of them include humans. And of course, I have to talk about my, my business here. But what I mean is that I think that whenever you have a marketing campaign that includes a celebrity, an influencer, a brand ambassador, something like that, I think it makes a really good impact, because it also enables the content marketing, which is that one of the purposes that I guess that every marketing campaign has, that it's at some point that you take photos, videos, and you share it. And I think there's higher chances that you would do that if you have somebody that you know. So of course, any volumetric capture, any marketing experience that includes a volumetric captured model, I think it's definitely for me more relevant. So we've done things both in VR and in AR. I remember one that we did for Acciona, which is one of the biggest energy companies in Spain, and that one in particular was basically featuring a real person giving you a tour in one of the new facilities that they have in virtual reality. And I think one of the ones that impressed me the most, even though I'm not sure if strictly speaking is an immersive experience, was this Balenciaga kind of game, if you remember, that was done kind of a couple months ago, where they featured a lot of volumetric capture models of all the new season of Balenciaga together with some 3D assets, and you could see them on a web browser. I think those are really important. So for us, I think anything that involves a person, a human, and I think even Burger King did one with a celebrity that you would get somebody on top of your Whopper, and I think those type of things are really valuable for the user and for the brand.
Okay, we'll come back to that. I think also the point you're making about the human dimension of this is really important, particularly around storytelling. You know that storytelling is ultimately a human activity, and so it's using the technology as an enabler, a facilitator, rather than an end in its own right, which I think we should never lose sight of. And I think that what you're saying there speaks to that. But we'll come back, because I think that's fascinating to build on that. James, I'll bring you in here. You've had tons of experience working on campaigns, not necessarily in your current role, marketing, but I know you've worked in Immerse in the past as well. So having listened to the panelists there in terms of what they're talking about, would that resonate with you in terms of the type of campaigns that impress or impact on you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really interesting one. I always naturally towards something of use. So adding something into the mix from a marketing perspective of use. The IKEA example, Cortney, you mentioned, that's just like just super use case. It's great marketing. It's really useful as well. It's going to drive sales. People are going to go, wow, that looks great in my room. I'm going to go buy it. I also, there is that room as well for the stuff that is more of that sort of, getting people engaged in the brand. So some of the things that I mentioned, the Burger King thing, football clubs doing sort of AR that you can stand next to, your favorite footballer, and therefore you feel closer to the club. So, I think there's value from both approaches, something that is real useful, kind of more utility, and then something that is just kind of, fun, engaging in the brand. And I think it's just, trying to get a balance between the two. I think there's some really interesting stuff going in the sports arena, obviously in between lockdowns and what have you, but they've done some really good stuff out in the States with Major League Baseball, where they're using filters within the stadium, getting people to do treasure hunts, that sort of thing, digital treasure hunts. I think enhancing that kind of experience, that once again, that's part utility, part brand building, it kind of sits in the middle. So yeah, and I think, the approach needs to always be, look, it's just another tool to stick in the marketing box. This isn't a silver bullet, it's not this, it doesn't solve all the marketing challenges, which sometimes people rather annoyingly tend to sort of imply that VR or AR or MR is going to solve world peace or what have you, which it's not. It's another really important tool to stick in the marketing toolbox.
I think you made a good point there. This distinction between utility and brand building is important. I think we need to understand marketing from the total perspective of what marketing is. Marketing does not equal advertising, does not even equal marcoms. It's about it's about customer experience. And so a lot of the AR solutions, which may be indeed driven by the marketing departments, are about increasing the user experience. The IKEA being the most obvious example, but it could be around, and we've a great panel on retail and tourism. I see those two sectors as ones where AR and VR are adjuncts to the customer experience. They're making the experience rather than necessarily a marketing communication play as such, but the two do sit beside each other. I think that's really irrelevant. Feel free, by the way, the rest of the panel to chip in. We don't need to do this in a logical sequence each time, so just barge in, as it were. It's a bit more difficult when we're doing it with video, but I'll see you. Okay, put your hand up if you want to add to the point. I want to move on though to web AR, and particularly for those, I'm conscious most people in the audience will know what web AR is, but for those who don't, web AR is where, and correct me if I'm oversimplifying this, is where if you're on a web page, for example, on a mobile device, and there's an experience, it tells you to click here, and an experience happens, like the Burger King flame or a character appears, as opposed to download our app and then something will happen. That's a very simplified version, but it's AR that's in the web itself is what we mean by web AR. Is this the key to unlocking the omni-channel opportunity? What does the panel think about web AR and how this is going to impact? You have your thumb up there, Cortney. Elaborate, please.
Well, I have a really short answer, and that's yes. Just to elaborate on that a tiny bit more. So we actually built a really early web AR experience with Unity. That was our very first job we ever did, actually. So that was 3 years ago. And yeah, I mean, no one's going to download an app, right? It's just everyone's got too many apps. People are very resistant to doing that. So your two options are either embedding the experience in an app that everyone already has, which is tricky. So unless you partner with an app that's really, really popular, then you're going to have a lot of people missing out, or to do a web AR experience. And web AR has gotten significantly better in the last several years. There are different, obviously, design considerations for web AR than there are for in-app AR. But yeah, I mean, that's definitely the way forward, because people just aren't going to download an app to do one random thing, unless, and I'll sort of caveat this again. So the Burger King campaign that I talked about, that I'm still obsessed with, even though it's been out for a couple of years, like that was to get people to use the Burger King app. So if you're using the campaign to drive downloads of an app that then has add-on use, like that's great. But that's kind of one of the very narrow field of use cases when that really works.
Yeah, and I think it sort of points or speaks to what James was making as well. If you're encouraging people to download an app because it has a utility benefit rather than an experience or an entertainment, you're much more likely to be successful. IKEA being a good case in point. I mean, for those people who follow IKEA, and it's just in the last couple of weeks they've launched IKEA Studio, which is a fantastic enhancement of what they had, because it now allows you to place multiple digital items in a space. So you can literally furnish an entire room with digital assets, whereas in the past you were doing one item at a time, which is, I think it's actually speaking of Sweden, I will bring in bring in the expert who probably contradict me on that point.
No, but I mean I have so much to say on that, because we're working with Space 10 on the IKEA Place app for a while now, as partners and supporters and explorers of how people behave and all of that. And Cortney was incredibly right about the whole issue that we have with apps. And how do we deal with that? But a good story here, both in the IKEA story and in the Bang & Olufsen story, they're a little bit different. IKEA decided more than 10 years ago that they would create 3D assets of all their products, since the very first one that they did. It started way before even the first NK2s on VR appeared. So it was an incredibly, an incredible foresight. And then that allowed them, when the first VR headset with HTC launched, and then of course when the AR app, or their AR app launched, it was like they were the first of their kind, right? And they were so quick. Like the HTC app from IKEA was there on day one. And the reason they did that is because they had that 3D asset library. So they were able to, be pioneers with that, because you need certain things, you need certain parts. In the Bang & Olufsen story, kind of what happened is we decided kind of together, because it's a long story that I don't think we have the time for here, but we decided that this would be an amazing app for customers, for the audience, but very, very quickly it became an extraordinary tool for the dealers. So it had kind of two usages there. We also found out that if you want to have that kind of quality on 3D assets and so many products on an app, you're also looking at immense sizes for the apps themselves. So, it's not only downloading the app, it's also downloading a 2 GB app, which is a whole other story for filling your phone, especially like, one of the iPhones from Apple was like 8 gig. We couldn't take like a quarter of that just for our own app. You have those kind of issues. But anyway, we kind of solved that. That's not the point here. And then once we had built this kind of library, we thought, okay, you know what, then we can actually use it on the web. And then if we do that, then we're able to transform the website into a fully customizable, experience that also has AR view in every product, no matter where you access it from. So all of a sudden, using the same assets, the same strategy, the same process, and of course, spending kind of, it's quite economical, this is quite cost efficient. Then we were able to take whatever we did for the app and apply it onto the web. And then it moved even further than that, because now we're also doing the packaging from those assets and from that kind of experience. So it's one ecosystem in general. Everybody needs to start thinking of this as a one piece. It's not a satellite, mixed reality assets or experiences or apps or whatever it is. It's part of the same digital ecosystem. So the sooner a brand understands that and starts building on it, the faster prepared they are. Like I said with the IKEA story. Sorry for talking a little bit too much.
No, that's good. I'm going to bring in Rafa here.
Yeah, I wanna throw like a slightly less positive note regarding web AR. So I think, well, I'm a huge fan of Web AR. Just to start with that, there's a few companies doing a great job, like Wall, for instance, making it incredibly easy to just get started. But I have the feeling that we might be too overly optimistic with the Web AR, in the sense that we need to be careful also when some of these experiences are like launched out there, because there's plenty of phones or plenty of devices that are still not really compatible with Web AR. Well, they are in theory, but then when you launch the application, what you're doing is launching something that is slow, that is breaking completely the experience. And I think we need two things. First, of course, we need devices to be more powerful to be able to deal with this type of things. And also we need to be aware that there's people that are not going to be able to see the experience and probably are going to have like a bad experience, and at some point even decide that AR is not for them, because we're pushing like an experience that maybe is not too fully targeted for Web AR. So I think we have to be very careful with this type of things, because sometimes we've seen experiences where a client wanted to do it with Web AR because they wanted anyone to be able to see it and download it, because they were going to be, I don't know, for instance, in a supermarket. So anyone who scans a QR code will be able to get the app and see the experience and so on. And then the outcome of that was that most of the people that are in the supermarket either don't care, don't see it, or if they tried, most of the times it wasn't working because the reception wasn't fine inside the supermarket, because many different reasons. So I think that Web AR is awesome. We need to have it like almost like standard, so always a way of doing it. But sometimes there are alternatives that might be simpler and will give you a better experience. And for instance, in this case of the supermarket example, it might work better to have a couple of tablets there for people to just grab them and see it, where the app fully installed and stuff like that. So even though I believe that Web AR is very important, sometimes we are showing the users, we're showing the experience in a device that it's not native to the web. So, and it hurts to say it, but for a phone or for a tablet, an app is more native. It works better.
And it's always good in this conference, because we've always taken the view we want a reality check at all points. So I appreciate that. I think that's good. Yeah, that because this industry, if it's nothing, there's a lot of hype in this industry too. I think we can all agree on that. Let's move on. Just the discussion. What interests me a lot as somebody who lectures in marketing is the extent to which AR and VR are creating audiences and actually media channels in their own right. Like, what sort of state of play are we at now? I'm familiar with, we can certainly see in the gaming, in the gaming environment, they're seen as media channels now. People pay a lot of money to place their digital assets in those spaces. Is this something that's going to move from the gaming environment into other environments, or is it still very early days? Anyone wants to take that point up? Cortney, I see you nodding, so I'm hoping you've got a perspective here.
Yeah, I'm also nodding to stay awake because it's still really early here. But yes, yeah. So my friend Tony, who works at Unity, is really involved in this, and he's kind of the expert in terms of selling ads into Unity applications, including VR applications and AR applications. It'll happen eventually, but it's going to be a really, really, really long time before it does, right? And maybe it becomes an issue of that's how content gets funded. So I can see that being a possibility. Or, VR will become so popular that it's the new TV, and brands will, just like they have advertisements on TV right now, brands will want in on that. But that's really, 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 really far in the future, right? That is way far out there, but eventually, probably, yeah.
On the other hand, I mean, we certainly see from Snap, I mean, they're one of the giants of this game. They have, I forget the figure, but it's well over 100 million people using their filters daily. I mean, it's well over that figure. Maybe someone in the chat can give me the accurate figure. So in that sense, there is an audience there, even if they don't term it augmented reality. They don't even necessarily say that it's augmented reality. Rafa, I don't know if you're muted mic there.
Yeah, no, I think that what you said is definitely the point, that sometimes we are using AR without really knowing, and that is definitely the point. That at some point, this is just another technology that we use on a regular basis, and we don't think it's AR, right? So I totally agree with you. I think that there's we are seeing like the first maybe marketplaces or where you could distribute this type of content in VR, but it's a little bit too early for AR maybe. So there's all these metaverse type of platforms, some of them being very successful. I think that's a very good starting point.
Yeah, James, I'll bring you in there.
Yeah, I mean, I think define a channel. In the environment we live in now, and what means by channel. I wonder if channel is something we tend to use in marketing now, but consumers are a bit like, well, it's just I get things from different places, what have you. So I think that's an interesting one. It's a bit like if you ask people what digital means. I still catch myself using sort of digital media, and you sort of go, no, you sound like a dinosaur. Don't use that word. People, it means nothing now. It's like, it means nothing. But, so I think that's an interesting thought. Some of the things I think, when you think about what's evolving, and it's kind of answers the question and kind of goes around it a little bit, but the whole subscription thing within VR as well. So when you talk about a channel or what have you, it's also the fact that people are now thinking of consuming the content in different ways. Like, if you think of, Supernatural, the fitness subscription service on VR from Chris Milk. That's a really interesting concept of people going, well, look, much as I subscribe to my Netflix, I'm going to subscribe to my, VR fitness program, or much as I subscribe to a gym. And I know FitXR have recently brought out a subscription model now that Oculus have updated their ability to do that. So I think that's an interesting mindset shift for people to start thinking about content in a different way, and something that they are prepared to kind of, put alongside the things they consider an absolute must in life, which is your Netflix, your Amazon Prime, or what have you.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And even taking that further, the issue of content and who creates and who owns the content, I think is fascinating as well, because it's a big topic. We could spend the whole session just on that, but certainly a lot of brands are looking at, co-creation. That opportunity there is there, but there's a lot of challenges with it too.
Yeah.
We have a couple of questions, by the way, or observations coming in. I'll just share them with you. Thanks, Richard Armstrong, for your observation. He says, I think once lightweight AR glasses become mainstream, advertising in AR will be ubiquitous. It's not that far away. He's predicting perhaps 2 to 3 years. I don't know if anyone has the inside track on where Apple are actually at in this space, but obviously people are watching that one very closely. And James is replying to him. We hope this is going to happen, but there are a few things that need to happen to even reach widespread adoption. Yeah. Number one, in my view, being Apple launching their glasses to validate it. But I don't panel's view on that in terms of AR glasses. Are they the tipping point for AR advertising?
I think first up, 2 to 3 years is. Apple are going to come out with some big announcement in their next, the next conference, but not 2 to 3 years. And ubiquitous, that's quite a big word to use. That's also a little ways off.
Yeah. James is predicting it'll be with your mobile phone contract, by the way. So there you go. It'll be maybe that's probably a way that you can probably sell this. I mean, if these glasses are $1,000, $2,000, etc., you can imagine that the way will be to price bundle it with a mobile phone and a monthly subscription. I would imagine that'll be one of the early ways that it will roll out, I suspect. Filippos, we haven't heard from you for a little while. Just bringing you back in.
Yeah, my 2 cents, because it's something we discuss here quite a bit as well, is personally, I think the glasses will be similar to the watch, similar to the phone. It's your own tool. You'll probably have your own ID technology on it. You'll be able to pay with it and do several stuff. So I don't see it as being intruded by ads. I think there's generally a little bit of a backlash for people, for companies coming into those territories. However, since you have that tool in front of you, I'm certain that companies will be able to do things like what Cortney said before with Burger King. So the enhancement of ads and generally bringing things to life, especially if you request them, because there's a fine line there between what is advertising and what is service, etc., etc. I think that will happen a lot. Yeah. So the ability to see a film poster on the street and see it come to life, maybe even directly purchase tickets with Apple Pay, combining those things, I think is probably a given within 3 or 4 generations of those glasses if they follow the same kind of pattern again.
Now, in the panel, I think all of you share one thing in common, which is that you're effectively on the agency side rather than the client side. So I am interested in your perspective, because obviously you would rely either on your own good marketing practices or maybe working through intermediary agencies to get adoption, because one of the ways you've got to connect to the marketing community as someone who knows that community well is, they put a lot of credence and trust in their agencies. So I am interested to get your perspective in terms of what is the role of the agency in advocating for immersive technology. Do you think full service agencies have the commitment, because you guys are, kind of focused on the market, but clearly full service agencies will have a role to play here as well. Who wants to take that on board? People disagree. Cortney, you're disagreeing, so I think you're gonna advocate for the specialist.
I'm just twitching. I'm just highly caffeinated and twitching at this point. But whatever. Yeah. I do disagree. Yeah. Full service agencies don't have the in-house knowledge for the most part. There are a couple. RGA has a really interesting partnership with a small VR company. But generally, no. I mean, we get pitches and ideas from agencies all the time, and they want to bring us on as their partner, or maybe to do development. And we often turn those down because we look at those, and what seems like a very easy idea is actually incredibly complicated. They don't have the budget. So they just, they're out there pitching ideas, but they're doing it kind of blindly. Yeah. So, one thing that I'm always advocating for, and this is obviously selfish in our interest, but I think it's in the interest of everyone in the long term, is, don't come to an expert in VR and AR with an idea. Come with a question, with an open mind, with a concept, right? But don't sort of fully bake in this idea when you don't know what you're actually sort of talking about, and then come to us and expect us to then be able to execute it, because that just won't work. Like, I've had to tell so many agencies, like, this isn't technically possible. Yeah. This sounds simple, but is actually very complicated. Like, have you thought through? And then there's a huge laundry list of things they haven't thought through, because they're like, oh, let's make an AR thing that does blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it's not that simple. Sorry. Maybe it will be in 20 years. So yeah, I mean, agencies and brands really, and this is, if any takeaway comes out of it, it's this: agencies, brands, whoever, like, engage with a specialist agency from like day one, right? Don't wait, because then it's going to be a lot of like going back and undoing, which is going to be a waste of time and resources. So
I've got a good story, Cortney, that backs up exactly what you're saying. So I've worked with Nestle, and they set up their own immersive technology team within Nestle to cover across all the various different segments within that. And they actually set that up because of that problem. So what they were doing is, and particularly, I think it was an AR campaign that sort of went a bit wrong for them. So they were going to their big multi-service agency and saying, right, we want to bring to life, Kit Kats, and we want to do something, And the creative agency, being a creative agency, would come back with these incredible ideas with a vague, dangerous understanding of the technology. And then they'd go, and the client would go, that's incredible, you can do this. And, no one needs to download anything, and it's all fine. And then that agency would take it to exactly yourself or someone similar and say, hey, let's deliver this. And it'd be like, you can't do that. So Nestle realized they were wasting so much time going back and forth with, in effect, the creative agency in the middle, sort of obfuscating the idea, not really getting it, that they set up their own team so they could go direct to the technology providers and get a better result. So, exactly that.
I think what is interesting, I suppose, as well, is what's happening on the client side anyway, is the interface between business and technology teams and the innovation teams themselves. It's not necessarily coming out of marketing in the way it might have in the past anyway, because they realize it is complex, that they do need a technical grasp. So, and even as an educator, I can see we would see a massive need for us to produce graduates that have got this tech business combination. The weighting might differ depending on what degree you're doing. Rafa, I'll bring you back in, because you have a, in one sense, you have a cutting edge technology. So you have a lot of explaining, if I can use that term, to both agencies, because Cortney's, I think, illustrated the challenge really well. Is that something that you're finding yourselves in Holograms, as well as you try to explain something that is kind of difficult to understand?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with Cortney. I think it was that is the most important part, that you have to make sure that you set the right expectations about what you're going to be doing with it, who's going to be the target audience, how you're going to deliver it. And just ties a little bit with what I was saying earlier about, these marketing campaigns that at some point you want them to be on web, or you want them to be on a specific device, or you sometimes have unrealistic expectations of how things are going to be. So yeah, we typically work with, we're working with normally the creative agency, not directly the marketing agency. So normally it's better because they already understand what's going on and what are the limitations. So I think we don't have those many problems, but sometimes we do. We talk with the final client or the marketing agency, and that's the most difficult part. So this first meeting is the most important one.
Filippos, I'll give you an opportunity to comment as well from your agency's perspective on this. You're muted there, by the way. You're on mute, Filippos. Sorry.
Okay, yeah. I mean, Outhere is born, again, a long story, but we built the VR lab for publicists many years ago here in Sweden, and became kind of the global center for this kind of technology. So we were smack into into the agency world and the big brands, and we started our first projects with Volvo cars and everything like that. And it reached the point we left when we moved so much further ahead and so much faster than the agency was willing to follow at the time. So we branched out, and then we found very quickly, of course, that the big brands, the global brands, had a little bit of a difficulty in working directly with the smaller agencies. So there was a gap created there that perhaps maybe the other guys on the panel are also familiar with. So, I mean, now we've kind of passed that stage because we've earned trust through projects, but it's an issue of how you work it together. And for me, the smaller agencies are more interesting in that respect, not because I'm a part of it, but because we think differently. We're a little bit more free. And one of the problems with the big agencies and the big client relationship is that they're treated the same. Who is your direct client? Who is the person that you will talk to? What is their position within the company? Where are their budgets coming from? How are they going to handle this project? They still haven't sorted all those things out. So sometimes, I mean, a common story is this. A company understands that there's potentiality in VR and AR for any kind of reason, and they don't know how to go about it. So they assign some person internally to be the responsible person for it because of their personality and their skills more than their experience, of course. And then they don't know how to go about it. They look for an agency. They end up in some place like we guys are running. I guess you understand the story I'm talking about. Then we do this thing together. Then it explodes internally. They kind of become global heroes in their company because they did something really cool and valuable. And then it kind of goes back into the same, it falls back into the beginning. So what next? So who owns it now? That person is moved into another position because they've done really well, and that's wonderful because that's a huge success for them and for us and for everyone. But where are we now? What's the next step? And there's this stall every time into the second step. I guess this is a little bit like something you guys, I guess, recognize, right? So yeah.
Oh my God.
This
is like this story that has happened to us time and time and time again. And this happened to us with Accenture. It happened to us it's happened to us with so many of our projects where, we come in, we do a great job, we, win these awards and we get all this attention and people get recognition. And, we're happy to collaborate with our partners and share the credit. And the funny thing is, and agency people will recognize this, like when things go well, the client takes the credit. And when things go poorly, you get the blame. And we've been fortunate enough to have all our clients take the credit, which is, great on one hand, because it means we're doing a good job. But yeah, it's this, there's no continuity, right? So I feel like for us, at least, we've worked with a lot of really great people and we do have like a pretty good pipeline, but it's a lot of like stops and starts and fits and starts. And, because, things are kind of chaotic internally and these organizations move very, very slowly. So for us, because we're tiny, it's myself and, I think we're 10 people at this point, right? So we're little, we move very quickly and we're dealing with these companies where there's, we have a client right now who I really like, but we gave them initial creative a month ago, right? For a project that we're doing. And it's taken them a month to get approval. And so we're sitting here like pushing back the filming date.